You finally decided to ditch the old stinky spreadsheet and you got QuickBooks, but now what do you do with it? How do you even use it? Maybe you have your bookkeeping set up and it's doing things, but you don't know what you're supposed to be looking at on a regular basis. So in this video, I'm going to walk you through specifically what to look at in QuickBooks whenever you're getting started to give you a better idea of how your business is doing. So I'm going to share my screen and we're going to jump into a sample company. But before I do, if you're not using QuickBooks yet or any kind of bookkeeping software and you're not sure which one is for you, I did do a video on all the different options that I know of, at least at that time. I'll put a link to that video somewhere up here so you can check that out if you're still deciding what bookkeeping software is right for you, if anything. Okay, so let's jump in. So this is a sample company file of QuickBooks. This is not a real company, Craig's Design Landscape. I don't know if it exists. So this is a sample file of QuickBooks. These are not real numbers. And whenever you first log into QuickBooks, after having everything set up, you're going to get to this dashboard. And honestly, I rarely ever use this dashboard. It doesn't give me a whole lot of information. Now, every now and then you're going to have like warnings or notifications up here that may be important. It should be obvious that it's important. But for the most part, you could probably just skip this dashboard. I haven't really been able to make sense of how to edit it in a way that really works for me. So I just skip over it, to be honest with you. Next thing to note, you're going to be met with 1,000 pop-ups and slide outs and AI things in here. It's just the game. They're trying to resell you stuff even though you're already paying for QuickBooks, which is always a lot of fun. Now, when you're in QuickBooks, there's really two things you're going to be doing. First, you have to actually do the work. If you're not paying someone else to do your bookkeeping, you have to go in and click the buttons to make the transactions reconcile. Even with all this AI stuff that they have, you still have to be the one in there clicking buttons and approving things, or at least checking to see what the AI has done. And the second thing is actually look to see what happened and check your reports. Now, if you're only using QuickBooks for tax purposes and you don't really care what the numbers say, I guess that's fine. But if you're wanting to use your numbers to grow your business and you want to see how your business is doing, then there's certain reports that you could be looking at. So in another video where I was going over a free version of QuickBooks that existed at that time, I kind of showed you what to look at or where to go to actually record transactions and reconcile and things like that. I'll show you that briefly, but what I really want to spend most of the time on in this video were the reports that you can get and how to read them and what to look for to see if your business is doing well. So the first place I go whenever I open a QuickBooks file or whenever I'm looking at my own QuickBooks is I want to go to the bank feed. I want to see what transactions have been categorized and what transactions haven't been categorized. And there's a few ways to get here. You can either go to all apps and then accounting and then bank transactions, or if you've set up shortcuts, you could get there here. So if there's something that you go to often, what I would do is go to that thing and click the little store next to it. Now, because I'm working with a sample file, some of those features don't work, so I won't be able to show you all of that, but I can actually go into the bank transactions and show you what that looks like at least. So when you go into the bank transactions, you're going to see all the checking and credit card accounts that you have connected to QuickBooks to your online bank. This is actually pulling transactions from your online banking, and it's listing all those transactions here at the bottom, and it's asking you to confirm where they should be categorized. What was this for? Was it for supplies or was it for inventory? Was this money that you took out of the business personally, or was this paying down debt? Whatever it is, you have to categorize that. If you don't see your business bank accounts up here, you need to click link account, and it's going to walk you through the process of letting it know what bank you use and then putting in your login credentials. From time to time, those credentials have to be updated, or maybe there's just a security thing and you have to reconnect that bank to QuickBooks. If that happens, you'll see some warnings and boxes and notifications up here at the top. Finally, make sure that you're only putting your business checking and savings and credit card accounts in QuickBooks. Don't put your personal credit card or your personal checking account in QuickBooks. If you have business transactions on those accounts, stop it. Don't do that. You're not supposed to do that. It makes things messy. Make sure your business transactions are all isolated in a business bank account or business credit card so that you're not having to parse through like, well, this was personal groceries, but this was business supplies. You don't need to have to do all that stuff. Okay, so what buttons do we press first? First thing you're going to press is update. Whenever you press update, it syncs your QuickBooks transactions to whatever's currently in your online banking. I usually click update no matter what, but you can see here that it says this little arrow thing with the 0 minutes next to it. It means that this was updated 0 minutes ago. Again, this is not a live file. This is all just sample data, so it doesn't make sense. But normally when you log in, you'll see that it'll either have the date that it was updated or how many days ago it was updated. So just click update to make sure that you're using current transactions things spin for a little while and then it updates. Now these chords here at the top, each one of these chords represents a different bank account. The numbers where it says bank, this means that the bank, the number that it got from online banking, that the bank says you have in the bank, is that number. So in this situation, it's saying that the bank is telling us that Craig has overdrawn his account by $3,600. But in QuickBooks, this posted number, this is the dollar amount that QuickBooks is showing is in his checking account as of today, based on all the transactions that have been recorded. So think of it like this. In your bank, you're actually spending money. You have money deposited, you have money coming out. If you have $1,000 deposited and then $200 withdrawn, you have $800 in the bank. That's your bank balance. But in QuickBooks, maybe you didn't post the $1,000 that went into your account. Maybe you forgot to. Maybe you didn't record that transaction for whatever reason, but you did record the $200 that came out. So your QuickBooks balance might show negative $200. So bank balance is what's actually in the bank. Posted balance is the balance that QuickBooks thinks you have in the bank. Normally, those two numbers should match once you've categorized all the transactions down here, because the transactions down here haven't been categorized, and so they don't impact this posted balance. So normally, once you're done with that, and this number at the top here is 0, this number at the top being the number of transactions that haven't been recorded yet, then those two numbers should match. But there are situations where they might not match. For example, if you write a paper check, if people still do that, and you record that check in QuickBooks, the bank doesn't know about it yet. So that would be a real difference that you should have. Or if there's just a timing issue where maybe you've transferred money from one account to the other and you've recorded it in QuickBooks, but the bank just hasn't processed that yet. So going back through it, bank is the bank balance, what the bank says you have. Posted is what QuickBooks says you have in that specific account. And this number at the top right is the number of transactions down here that haven't yet been categorized. So you've already clicked update, you've checked your stuff here, you see the dates. The next thing you're gonna do is just go through all these transactions and categorize things. So let me walk you through that real quick. What this is telling you here is that the bank description on this transaction, like what came through online banking, says books by Bessie. And you received $55 here. That's all the information we have. So if you click it, it's going to expand it out and you're going to have a few things here. Let me just walk through them real quick. So if you switch this to match, what's going to happen is it's going to bring up a set of transactions within a certain time period around this date. And it's going to try to say, well, do any of these match this transaction? Usually you won't have that unless if you're recording things in QuickBooks, maybe through an integration with Shopify, or maybe you're just manually entering things. Normally though, if all you're doing is recording transactions from your bank feed, you probably won't ever have anything to match. You'll just be categorizing everything. So with transaction type, this drop down is going to change based on what the transaction is. Now under transaction type, the drop down options here are going to change depending on if this was money received or money spent. So I'll do one where we spent money as well. But if it's money received, then it's either just a straight deposit, or it's a sales receipt, or it's a transfer. Now, deposit and sales receipt, you can kind of use those interchangeably. Both of those can record income. Both of them, you can select a customer or a product or service that you sold. The only difference is that certain things show up on certain reports. And so if you're wanting to go look at a sales by customer report in QuickBooks, then you need to have sales. And if you only have deposits, then it may not pick those up as sales. Now, if you're talking about royalties from Amazon, or you're talking about draft to digital deposits or things like that, you're not talking about an individual sale. You're talking about like your payout for that period. So in those cases, I would probably just use deposit. Whenever you want to get a little bit more advanced, you can connect your QuickBooks account to things like Shopify, to where you can actually have the individual things coming in, but then that's a whole different level. So for right now, just assume that most of the time deposit's going to be okay here. Under from and to, you would select the customer. Now, what I like to do for authors is I like to use the payor as the customer. So if you got paid from Draft to Digital, I'm going to have a customer called Draft to Digital. If you got paid from Amazon, I'm going to have that as a customer. What that does is it allows me to just have one category called sales instead of having to have a category called sales draft to digital, sales Audible, sales Amazon. But you could always drill down into the sales account to see like where most of the money has come from. I do have some clients that we actually do list out on the P&L each of the different vendors that they get paid from, because they do want to track at a glance how much has come from each vendor. And that's really up to you and what you're trying to track. So add your customer, whoever it is that paid you, and then you're going to add the account. Now, QuickBooks doesn't always give very much rhyme or reason into what the order of the accounts is. It's showing me expenses first, even though this is money received. So if you scroll down, you can start seeing maybe some income. So here's some other income items, here's some assets, and here's the income accounts that we have. And you'll notice you can actually have sub accounts in these income accounts, or in any account really. So by default, what you'll probably end up having in QuickBooks is an account called sales of product income. And if you do nothing, then that's probably where those deposits are going to get categorized. And that could be okay as long as you have enough information on the back end. But if you want some more nuance in here, then you can set up your own chart of accounts here. So the list of all of the accounts that you can use is called your chart of accounts. You can set these up however you want. You can add new ones, you can add sub accounts, and you want to set the accounts up in a way that makes it easy to read and easy to see. And that's going to make more sense whenever we get to the financial statements. You'll see what I mean. But you'll need to make a decision on, do you want to track your income by, let's say, hardcovers, paperbacks, audiobooks, and ebooks? Or do you want to track your sales by title or series? Or do you want to track your sales by platform like Draft2Digital or Amazon or Shopify? You can do any or all of them. The more detail you add, the more complicated your bookkeeping gets. So just make sure that whatever you're doing, however you're tracking it, actually is useful for you. A lot of times you have the information you're trying to put into QuickBooks in some other platform. So especially if you're using Shopify, you're doing direct sales, you can get the information on the title or hardcover or paperback or whatever from Shopify. So to try to replicate that data back into QuickBooks and make it match exactly, I don't really see that there's too much value in doing that, to be honest with you. Okay, so let's say that this was design income. I'm going to go back and select a customer. Let's just say it was this. You could also select a product or service. So this gets pretty deep into the weeds. In QuickBooks, you can have product and service items set up. And what that does is it says, if I sell this one item, then it's always going to be this specific account. So you would pick one, either pick account or pick an item, but I don't think you should pick both, because I don't know if you'd even be able to. Now, for you specifically as an author, probably don't even recommend using the items unless if you are tracking every individual sale in QuickBooks, which again, that is a huge lift. So I typically don't recommend that, but if you wanted to, you could, and you could go in and you could create sales receipts and sales and deposits for every single thing you sell to every single customer. Again, that is super time consuming. I had one author who was doing that and quickly gave up on it because it just takes way too long to do your bookkeeping. And honestly, the data that you end up getting in QuickBooks is no different and no better than what you have in Shopify anyway. So for your purposes, deposit, who actually deposited the money, and then whatever income account you want to use here. If you have more details about what you want to put, let's say you did an in-person event and you just want that information in QuickBooks, you could type that out here in the memo and you can say like in-person events in Louisiana Book Fest or something. If you have documentation, you have receipts, or you have a deposit slip or whatever, you can actually upload those to this transaction so that it's connected to it always and forever by clicking the upload button there. Okay, so then now we're just going to click post, and that transaction is now posted, and that deposit now impacts this posted balance here in that card. Okay, so now I want to do an expense. So on this one, you'll see this A rental, $1,200 spent, and it has a categorization here for us. Just because you see a category here does not mean that it's the correct category. QuickBooks just guesses, and their guesses are usually wrong. So if you just go through and you click post, 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 your bookkeeping is going to be wrong. So let's click into this transaction and see what it says. It tells us full bank description says A1 rental, backhoe rental. So it looks like we rented a backhoe. Again, you have transaction types. So you can do an expense, a check, a transfer, or a credit card payment. If it's money coming out of a bank account, it's going to be an expense unless if you write paper checks, in which case it's a check. The only time I'll ever use the transfer transaction type in here is if I'm literally transferring money from one bank account to the other. We do that quite a bit because we follow the profit first system. But if you use transfer for anything else, It causes issues later because the transfer transaction types have very few things that you can add or edit about them. So if you ever need to go back and split the transaction in multiple categories, you can't. So only ever use transfer if you're literally transferring money from one bank account to the other. Don't use it for loan payments. Don't use it for credit card payments or line of credit payments. Only use it if you're transferring money from one checking account to another or one savings account to another or whatever. Again, as an author, most of your expenses are going to be auto drafted from your bank account. Those are just going to be expense. Same kind of thing here. We're going to select who it is you actually paid. These are now vendors. Let's say we paid Cal Telephone. And again, just like with income, you can have products or services that you buy. Think of this like if you're buying inventory, you want to track the number of things you bought and the number of things you sold. But for the most part, you're going to be looking here at this account. Now, QuickBooks said, we think this is equipment rental because it says A1 rental, backhoe rental. It's actually a really good guess. Even still, it's not a bad idea just to think about it. Don't just take QuickBooks' word for it. And one cool thing you do have access to is this categorization history. If you click this button, it's actually going to bring up how transactions to A1 rental have been categorized in the past. Now, in this situation, we actually didn't select A1 rental. We selected Cal Telephone, and it does say that we actually don't have any transactions based on the bank description. It actually says we don't have any transactions historically for Cal Telephone, so it doesn't know how to do it, but it did give us this information here, like based on the bank description, we think it could be equipment rental. You don't have any historical transactions here to base that on. We're just using our best guess. And it is saying that, hey, by the way, this would be a new vendor for you if you did want to set up A1 rental as a vendor. So let's say all this is correct. We're going to just click post. And now that transaction is included in our posted transactions. Here you can see where the posted transactions went down to $56. Okay, so you have recorded all your transactions. Let's just pretend that all these have been updated. Or maybe you don't have time right now to record the transactions and you really just want to look at the reports. That's okay too. What we want to do is we want to see, well, what transactions have been recorded so that I know what reports are accurate. If right now I went into here and I pulled up a May report, a May 2026 report, then it's missing these transactions here. That report wouldn't be accurate. Even if I pulled up an April report, it wouldn't be accurate because I still have April transactions that haven't been recorded. So what I like to do, if I'm not coming into the bookkeeping and I'm just coming in to actually check reports and see what's going on, I'll go to the date and I'll sort it backwards to see what's the earliest transaction that I have. And that tells me what report dates I can look at. This says the earliest transaction that I haven't recorded is in March. So if I look at anything from March 1st onward, that's not going to be accurate because I still have transactions here that haven't been categorized. Instead, I would need to look at anything from the end of February or before to get an accurate financial statement or to know that the financial statements are actually up to date. And I would just do that for each one of these accounts. I would make sure that all of them have things past February. It looks like they do. So it looked like February is my date. Now, another thing that you would need to do before actually looking at your reports is reconcile your bank account. I'm not going to go through that in this video because that's going to be a whole other thing, but reconciling your bank account is just saying, this is the bank balance. This is the QuickBooks balance as of the date that I'm reconciling. A reconciliation, think of it like the old school checkbook reconciliation. You're actually saying, hey, I'm reconciling this account as of March 31st. The bank says I have $200. I say I have $800 as of March 31st. Why is there a $600 difference? And the bank reconciliation helps you to reconcile that and find maybe errors in your bookkeeping. But we're just going to pretend that everything's been reconciled through February. So next we're going to go into the reports. Come over here to the sidebar, hover over reports, click on standard reports. Now, once that loads, you're going to have at the top here your favorites, and it's automatically going to give you a balance sheet and a profit and loss. It may give you an accounts receivable aging summary as a favorite, but you can find all the reports down here. Most of these you're never going to use. I'm going to show you the ones that you should be using. So the one that most people are going to go to first is your profit and loss. And that's this one here. Now, while that loads, I did do a video on how to read a profit and loss and what you should be looking for. The profit and loss that I go through in that video, I was using an Excel sheet that I downloaded so that I can show you, manipulate the numbers. But I'm going to show you actually within QuickBooks in this one, but you can check out that video. I'll put the link somewhere in the cloud. So we open our profit and loss, and I want to point out a few things. First, here's all our stupid pop-ups. So X out of all the pop-ups. You have to X out of this pop-up, then you have to X out of the sidebar. Now we finally have our reports back. Up at the top, you have your settings. So you have your report period here, and then it says from and to. These three fields are all related. What this is telling us is what information do you want included in this profit and loss? A profit and loss just tells you what income you came in and what expenses came out during a very specific time period. It's not for all of eternity. There are no carryovers. It's only the time period you're looking at. So this one is automatically defaulting to this year to date, which is January 1st through today. So none of the income and none of the expenses from 2025 are included in this report anywhere. If you want to see 2025, you would have to pull that up as a separate date. So since I know that we still have some 2026 bookkeeping to do, let's look at 2025. What you would do here is you click the down arrow and you can select these pre-built date ranges. So if you scroll down to where you start seeing the word last, you can go here to last year. Now they also have last month, last quarter, last week. You can look at the last 12 months. You can look at lots of information. Now it looks like the sample file actually doesn't have a whole lot of information for last year. And so we're going to have to look at this year. So come back here. We're going to say this year. Now it's actually going to pull everything from the first to the end of the year. Obviously there's no transactions recorded after today, but it is what it is. Next is cash or accrual accounting method. Usually you're going to be cash. If you set up your QuickBooks correctly, it shouldn't default to cash here, unless if you're tracking receivables and payables, then you want to do cash. Otherwise, it's basically the same thing. Accrual just means that it's going to show you the income, even if you haven't received it, but if you have recorded the sale. So like if you're recording, let's say your Amazon sales, but you're waiting for the royalties to come in, then you might have that as a receivable. And it's only going to, and if you have accrual selected, it's going to show you the expenses, even if you haven't paid them. So if you got a bill in the mail and you entered that bill into QuickBooks, but you haven't paid it yet, it's going to show up on here. But if you have cash selected, it's only going to show you the income that has actually been deposited and the expenses that have actually been spent. And for most people, I suggest doing the cash basis because realistically, the most important thing you should be tracking in your business is your cash. Another video on that. I'll try and remember to link that as well. Now this display columns by, I really like this. What this is nothing selected. It's just going to show you the total. What is the total design income for January 1st through the end of the year? What is the total landscaping services and so on? But if you can do this drop down, you can actually see things by a lot of different information. So if we want to see the P&L by customer, you can click that. This is going to look stupid, but it's going to list out every customer listed here. So you can see all the income and all the expenses. That's really only useful if you actually have expenses recorded for each customer though. It's not going to be you. You can do by employee, whether it makes sense, by product or service. What I like to do is do it by months. And so now I have a visual of what the transactions were each month of the year. I can see that nothing was recorded in January. I have a little bit of things recorded in February, nothing recorded in March, and a lot of stuff recorded in April. So this is a very incomplete QuickBooks. But if the numbers were actually in here, then you can use this to glance over and see what is my total income each month. And you can start noticing those spikes. Now, what I really like to do is actually change this from this year to last 12 months. So if you scroll down, you can actually see here, last 12 months. And it's going to change the report to be the end of the most previous month and then 12 months before. And because I have display columns by month, I see every single month here. So this just shows me for the last 12 months what's happened. And what I like to do is like to glance through it and see, is there anything missing? Is there anything weird? Is there an account that I normally have a transaction in that suddenly I don't have a number in? Like maybe I have monthly rent and then all of a sudden 1 month I don't show the rent there. What happened? Or maybe there's an account that I never use and 1 month I suddenly used it. Is that something that maybe I should have recorded somewhere else to be more consistent with prior months? So I look at the last 12 months by month and then I like to look at the last 12 months total. So now we're back to just showing the last 12 months, May through April. But I want to compare that to the previous 12 months. So if you click this compared to box and you go down to previous year, it's going to compare everything to the previous year's transactions. Now, in this QuickBooks file, there's obviously nothing in 24 to 25, but you would be able to see the difference between each one. You can even come into this comparison box here and you can tell it not only show me the numbers side by side, but show me the dollar amount of that change and the percentage of that change. You click out of it to view it, and now we can see the dollar amount of the change. In this example is obviously the total amount in the current column because there's nothing in the prior column, and the percentage is nothing because it's divided by 0. But the point here is you can quickly see how much have my sales grown, how much have my expenses grown, by what percentage has each one grown. That's really important information. Now, the other things that you should be looking for in your QuickBooks are just going to depend on what things you're tracking. Honestly, a P&L doesn't give you a whole lot of information if you don't have something that you're going to compare it to. You can come back to these reports here and you can look at all the different reports available to you and just see if there's something here that looks like something you're looking for. But I wouldn't start from a list of reports. I would start instead from the thing you're trying to accomplish in your business. Were you trying to grow sales? Were you trying to cut expenses? Were you trying to get better profit margins? Are you trying to get better cash flow? So for example, if you're trying to cut expenses, come down to the expenses and vendor section. I would pull up an expense by vendor summary. This report is going to show you for whatever time period you select. You have the same type of settings up here, all the money you spent for each vendor over that time period. And you can actually sort it by the dollar amount. So now if we do it twice, you can see the vendor we spent the most money on down the list. And then you can start saying, well, wait, why am I paying them this much money? And this would be a great place to start if you're doing an expense analysis every quarter like you should be. Now, there are lots of reports. There are a lot of bells and whistles in QuickBooks. There are a lot of things that it can do. Most of it is overkill. There's a lot of things in QuickBooks you don't need. The only reason that we ever suggest QuickBooks to authors is because it is the most commonly used bookkeeping software. And so it has the most integrations to the most other apps. But that landscape is quickly changing. There are a lot of software companies coming out that are building new QuickBooks alternatives. So I'm kind of actually excited to see what that looks like. So that's a really quick overview of QuickBooks. And like you can see, there is no really one right way to use QuickBooks. It just depends on your own business. Whenever I was a CFO of a bank, there was no guidebook for how to present the financial information to the other executives and to the board of directors. And over the course of the 5 years that I worked there, the information that I gave the board changed. And even within each year, it would change just depending on what it was that we were trying to track at that time period. So you don't start from your numbers and then figure out if your business is healthy. Instead, you start from what you decide is the thing you're focusing on, and then you use your numbers to see how you're doing. Your P&L, your profit and loss, your balance sheet, and any other financial information that you're going to get out of QuickBooks, it's just a report card for how your business is doing. But before you can say whether your business is doing well or doing poorly, you have to have something to measure that against. If you brought in, let's say, $100,000 of income, but your profit after all of your expenses was $10,000, is that good or is that bad? It's neither. It just depends. If the year before you brought in $100,000, but you had $40,000 of profit, then shrinking profits by $30,000 might be a bad thing, but it might also mean that you've reinvested money into your business that might pay off later. Or if the year before you had $100,000 of income and you had a loss of $40,000 because you spent more money than you made, and now you're actually showing a profit, that trend could be a good thing. So the numbers in and of themselves, in a vacuum, are basically useless. You need to have something to compare them to. Check out the other videos that I've done recently on tracking your cash flow, on reading a profit and loss, and what you should be comparing it to get more information about that. But I did want to do a walkthrough of QuickBooks just to show you where to get the information once you know what it is you want to be tracking in your business. Later on, we'll do a video of how to figure out what is it that you should be tracking in your business? What should you be focusing on next? And then what metrics should you track to make sure that you're making progress along those lines? I know that this was a longer video. I do hope that this was helpful. I'm so glad not to be talking about taxes for just a minute, but if there's anything that you have questions on, any kind of walkthroughs that you would like to see or tutorials, let me know. I like doing these, but I also like doing the other ones. If there's any other types of walkthroughs or tutorials or information that you'd like to see on the channel, let me know in the comments and I'll get those added to the list. And I will see you next time.